So, so welcome, Nicole Stott, to our little Kolbe Times interview here, and thank you so much for being with us and taking the time to share some of your stories.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
I wanted to ask you first a little bit about your childhood. About you were born in New York, I read, and moved to Florida though at a very young age. Can you tell us a little bit about your early life, your family, some of the important influences or events in your life when you were young?
Yeah, absolutely. I think primarily when I look back on it now is that I really feel like my parents just maybe not even intentionally, shared what they loved with me and with my sisters, right? And my mom was a nurse and also very creative, and so if I was going to get to a ballet lesson or to softball practice or anything like that, she was making that happen for me, for my sisters. She also, that was back in the like what 60s 70s, so that was the days of macrame and hooked rugs and pottery and stuff like that. And so when she was doing classes like that, she'd involve us as well. And then my dad loved to build and fly small airplanes. He was a businessman, but he, as his own hobby, built and flew small airplanes, and not so small because they were big enough for us to fly in. So they were like real airplanes, and my mom would get us out to the airport to hang out with him while he was doing that. And so, growing up, a lot of our time was spent at the local airport, either flying or around people that loved flying or learning about flying, or just as kids running in the field chasing damselflies. And I think that combination of how they shared what they loved with us really influenced me. Certainly, I credit it with, I don't know, with my love of flying, but my wanting to know how things fly. And that kind of led down this path of what I studied at school, what I wanted to do for a job, that kind of thing. But just really thankful for that very positive, thoughtful influence that they had. And we're my husband and I try to do that with our son now too. We have, as he's grown up. And I think it's really cool to watch how kids, just through something like that, um, even if they don't end up loving exactly what you do, or if I didn't end up loving exactly what my parents did, we figure out kind of what does make us curious and what we are excited about, and kind of can take that lead that way. And then I grew up in Florida, so I hung out on beaches and in the sun, and probably too much sun. And yeah, really, really just have very positive memories of childhood.
Great, well, that's neat.
Yeah.
Um, was faith in church a part of your childhood experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. And that I again credit my mom, in that regard. We grew up, a Catholic, in the Catholic Church, and from as early as I can remember, attending Sunday school and weekly mass and that kind of thing. My mom was definitely the influence there. My dad was the come in at Easter and Christmas kind of guy, but I felt a very I think we discover these things in people, throughout our lives, even if they're not going to church every week. There is like a faith, a passion, a spirituality about people that you can find, and he certainly had that. And but yeah, just grew up that way. First communion, confirmation, all those things along the way. Yeah.
Right. And your post-secondary studies, I have read a little about a Bachelor of Science degree in aeronautical engineering, I believe, and then leading to a Master of Science in Engineering Management from the University of Central Florida. And after graduation, around 1987, you worked for a while as a structural design engineer in the field of jet engine design. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
but that was
Yeah, and it's funny. I had applied to NASA even at that time, and they were on a hiring freeze. So I wanted to work at the Kennedy Space Center, um, and at that time they were getting ready like to start flying shuttles again post Challenger, and I was really excited about working for NASA. But they were on a hiring freeze, and so I was really fortunate to get this job uh, at Pratt and Whitney down in West Palm Beach, and it was cool because it wasn't just like working on jet engines, but it was on the super top secret stuff they had going on, and all these stealthy kinds of things, and really advanced design on aircraft and aircraft jet engines. And if you were to look at my resume, I guess that's what we had, yeah, resume and what you sent out to try to get a job at the time, my interest was this job couldn't have been any closer to what I described as what I wanted to do as a structural design engineer. And it's kind of like your parents exposing you to different things and figuring out what you like and what you don't like, because I was so thankful to get this job. And then one of the reasons I was thankful for it was that I discovered that I am not the person who should be cranking out, the like hardcore engineering, solutions to things. I really discovered that I needed to be the person that had my hands on the hardware and stuff. And so it made that job at Kennedy Space Center even more appealing. But I also discovered how thankful we should be for all the different kinds of interests that people have. Because the people I was working with at Pratt and Whitney who were doing this hardcore engineering, oh my gosh, they were skilled and talented, and they were coming up with things that I never in my own brain could have created. And so it was really neat to see how we all have kind of our thing. And sometimes you have to get into what you think you thought you wanted to do to discover that that's not the thing, the thing for you.
exactly.
And yeah, and so I still keep in touch with all those folks. They all wish me well as I went on to start my career at NASA as an engineer there.
Right.
And
So a year later,
yeah,
right? Wow, that must
so
have been
thankful
quite
for that
exciting.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. It's really
Yeah.
interesting how all experiences, lead to the next thing, or as you say, lead you down a different path.
Yeah.
But
Even sometimes, when you don't get what you think you wanted, and then these beautiful things just pop out of it, these opportunities come along that you never even really knew were possible for yourself, right?
right.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of leads me to, you worked at NASA for quite a while, 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, but you didn't have being an astronaut on your radar at the start, did you? I know there's kind of a story behind that, isn't there? That it took a few other people to
Yeah.
you along the way.
Well, that's interesting to me too. I do have colleagues, astronaut colleagues who, literally, I think they feel like from the day they saw that first rocket launch, or the day they watched Neil and Buzz walk on the moon, it was like set in their brain that this is what they wanted to do. They wanted to be astronauts. Everything they were going to do along the way was going to feed into supporting that possibly happening somehow. And that wasn't the same for me, and I think it's not the same for a lot of my other colleagues too. There's kind of this mix. And I had watched the first moon landing with my family, have vivid memory of that. Being even at, I don't know, 6 or 7, realizing how extraordinary that is. That, oh my gosh, there's people, like, that's a long way. Even as a kid, you're like, man, that's a long way away. That's the moon. There's people walking on that place right now. But it excited me. I was certainly inspired by it. I think it kind of laid in the shadows maybe as I grew up and was more excited about flying and knowing how things fly and rocket ships fly. And but it really wasn't until probably 8 or 9 into the 10 years at Kennedy Space Center that I started thinking about it being a possibility. Just because I was starting to realize, wow, I'm watching these astronauts come through as we get the vehicles ready for them to fly. And I'm seeing that, like 99.9% of an astronaut's job is not flying in space. It's here on Earth. And as best I could tell, at least 80% of it was a lot like what I was already doing as a NASA engineer. And so that gave me a little bit of a warm fuzzy to think, I could at least consider it. Because up till that point, I thought, only other special people get to do this astronaut job. That's I don't know. It's way too cool. It's why would they ever pick me? What have I ever done? And honestly, it really and truly took me speaking with, a couple people that I trusted as mentors and them really saying nothing more than, Nikki, pick up the pen and fill out the application. And it's like they gave me permission to do that. It was really very cool. And I know that I wouldn't have done it on my own without them. And I'm very thankful that they didn't lead in with what they could have, which is, oh, Nicole, tens of thousands of people apply for this job. There's so little chance of you getting it, but go ahead, fill it. They didn't do that at all. They're just like, hey, pick up the pen, fill out the application. Let us know if you need our help.
Shows you the importance of mentors in our lives, isn't it? And actually now I'm just thinking that it really encourages us now at the later in our lives to be mentors and encouragers to others, isn't it? So
and to think about how we phrase things, how we communicate with people, how we respond to something that might seem absurd, like Nicole, Stott becoming an astronaut. That could have seemed totally absurd to them. And yet they didn't lead in that way. They just supported me with the one thing they knew I had total control of, which was to fill out the application.
Right. And I think you weren't accepted on your first application, right?
No, I was actually quite surprised to even get an interview on the first application. So I was very thankful for that. I went into it with still, some of that self-doubt, I think, of, wow, this is really cool. Just enjoy it. Still, you don't stand a chance, meet the people, talk, do the interview, all that. And it was incredible. It was an incredible time. The people were awesome. But I didn't get selected, but I was very fortunate because the person who told me that I didn't get selected also offered me a job. They offered me a job at the Johnson Space Center to come out and work at the airfield, flying on this really amazing airplane, this shuttle training aircraft, which was used to train the astronauts to land the space shuttle. And I thought, oh my gosh, how can it? It was like, really, how can it get any better? I'm gonna now, because I accepted that job. I'm gonna go work, for NASA, still supporting the space shuttle program, getting closer to knowing what the astronaut thing is all about. And I'm going to get to fly in really cool airplanes to get to do that. My office is going to be at an airport. I mean, for me, it just didn't really seem like it could get any better. And that was an incredible job. 2 years doing that. And they had, there was, there was motivation behind it for them. They wanted to see, there was something else they just wanted to see about me. How would I work as a crew in a complex vehicle and stuff. And so I tell anybody, if they offer you a job, if they don't give you the astronaut job, but they offer you another job, you take that job.
So then you were accepted, of course, and then the astronaut training. I was really fascinated to read about that. I mean, it sounds incredibly difficult, but also incredibly amazing too. Some of the things you did, maybe you could talk a little bit about the Aquarius Undersea Research Habitat.
Yeah, that was probably the pinnacle to me of the training. I think, when you first get selected, there's this period of time where you're called an ASCAN, or an astronaut candidate. And that's when it's like 2 years of a lot like going back to school, learning all about the spacecraft you might fly on, learning about the different kinds of science that happen, getting to know how NASA works some more. I was fortunate I had already, worked within NASA, but seeing what happens at the other centers and things, and then supporting people who are already flying in space, learning about what's going on that way, and, how to do spacewalks and how to fly the robotic arm, all of these really amazing things. And then as part of that, I think as part of all of it, really, it's about how do you work as a good crew, as a good team. And so we would go off and do, 10 days in the Utah Canyonlands or cold weather survival or all these, I mean, really, really awesome training. But the best absolutely was to go live underwater for 18 days on this, and it's about 60 feet underwater off the coast of Key Largo. It's a habitat called Aquarius, about the size of a school bus, which is about the same size as one of the space station modules, and the best analog preparation.
Right. I was also intrigued to hear that you took a Russian language immersion course. It sounds like
Yeah.
challenging.
Yeah, that, I'll tell you what, learning to speak Russian was the most difficult thing for me about astronaut training. Absolutely. To be over 40 and learning my first language ever. I never took the first Spanish, German, any French class ever, even through university. And, at that point, your brains are wired, it's just wired a little bit different. It rebels against another language. So that was, yeah. And we all have to know it. I mean, everyone has to know how to speak English and Russian across all of the international partners. And
Fascinating.
yeah, but I'm very thankful for that
Yeah.
opportunity
Good for
too.
your brain too, as they always
Yeah. I guess, yeah.
of course, the space experience itself, but the training was quite long, wasn't it? 9 years, I think.
Yeah, so my class was chosen in 2000. And at the time, we were told that any of us, our first flight would probably be about 5 years, have to wait about 5 years before our first flight. And which seemed long to us then, like, oh my gosh, 5 years, do we really have to, and that's just because of the number of flights that were happening, at the time. And then sadly, unfortunately in 2003, we had the Columbia accident. And so that pushed out, I mean, even the class before us, it was 8, 9 years before people were getting their first space flight. But I'll tell you, it was worth the wait, absolutely worth the wait. And even the training, the like focus training after I was assigned to my first flight, that was 3 years long, to prepare to go on a long duration space flight. And but I'm, in hindsight, very thankful for that time too. Like this week right now, yesterday was the 12th anniversary of my first docking, like getting to space and docking with the space station for the first time. And so more time has gone by now since I flew than what I had to wait to
Yeah.
fly the first time. It's crazy.
Yeah. So you spent a total of 104 days in space and went up twice.
Mm-hmm.
The first time, 2009, I guess, wasn't it? When
Yeah.
you this on board the Space Shuttle Discovery with your crewmates and
Yeah.
left Earth. I just, were you that moment when it took off, were you scared out of your mind or were you excited or?
Excited, anxious. I think the fear I had at that point was thinking about my family really watching me do this. It is much more difficult to watch somebody you care about strap into a rocket with exploding, rocket engine stuff going on below them than it is to be the person who's trained to do it for so many years and is just while you understand the risk associated with it, I mean, you are anxious. You're anxious to launch. You're anxious to get to space, to do the job that you trained to do, and to experience all of that. So for me personally, about myself, it was the big smile comes on your face, high fiving your crewmates, the woohoo, just trying to take it all in because it was pretty overwhelming, quite the ride to space, and then to think that from sitting so kind of still and comfortable and peacefully, quietly on the pad before launch for a couple hours to when those solid rocket boosters lit, like just really this wake up call of, wow, was I ever on the launch pad? Just knowing you're going someplace really fast, shaken, like you can't imagine your body shaking. And then just being in awe when you reach orbit 8.5 minutes later and thinking, wow, I am really here. I'm alive. That's good. And I'm, in this place that I dreamed about and, looking forward to doing this work and not being able to wait to get unstrapped and get my face into the window to see Earth below and
Right.
what it
Yeah.
was going to be like to float and fly and all those things I think that you're
Right.
expecting when you
And
get
then
there.
seeing the space station as you
Yeah,
get closer. Wow. I
that was
know
wild.
you've called it the International Space Station a masterpiece.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. It just is hanging there. And I don't know that the engineers thought about it like, oh, we're going to create this work of art when it was being built. But man, you look at it and the way the sun hits it and the colors that happen with it, and just, it's massive. Even when you see it as this like tiny little dot of light out in the distance, you know how big it's going to get in your face. And
It's
yeah,
like
it's
the size of a
hard to believe.
football field, right?
It is, yeah. If you were to lay it on the ground, it's bigger than a football field, and it's just incredible to think what we really can do. The challenges we can overcome when we just decide that we're gonna, you know, solve the problem. One of those mentors that I have um, that encouraged me to pick up the pen, Jay Honeycutt. He's actually, I've got it right here. So his motto that he shared with all of us young engineers when we first started at Kennedy Space Center, and I think it applies to everything. And I've had it on my desk in one way or another ever since then. And now a little astronaut guy gets to hold it, but it's like the words are, "Here's how we can, not why we can't." And to me, those just say, I mean, it just puts you in it's like this positive frame of mind then, right? Okay, we're gonna go in believing there's a solution to every challenging problem, whether that's building a space station with, 15 international partner countries, or doing the science there, or getting people off the planet to go live and work there. I mean, we are just deciding that we are going to find the solution to the problem. And I think those things, that approach applies to everything we should be doing down here on Earth too. The way we live with, all the life we share the planet with, and how we treat the planet itself too.
Well, the international part of it too is such a good, just again, just a really good analogy, isn't it, for,
Yeah,
what can be done and what we should
it
be.
is. It is the perfect. It's like my whole mission in life now is for people to understand that, to see that there is. I mean, we built this mechanical life support system in space, right? So we could go there, the fleshy ones could go there and do science and figure out how to explore further off our planet, right? And we purposely did that in a way to mimic as best we can what Earth does for us naturally. And so while we're there, the 6 or 7 people that are representing these 16 different countries, every day we're thinking, how much CO2 is in my atmosphere? How much clean drinking water do I have? The integrity of our thin metal hull, and absolutely, the health and well-being of all of our crewmates. And to me, I mean, at the most basic level, that's exactly how the 8 billion or whatever of us should be behaving down here on Spaceship Earth. It just makes total sense.
Mhm. Yes. Wow. And I think too that the challenges of working together and overcoming as a new crew up there, no gravity, so
Yeah. That just makes it fun.
it must have been fun as well. And
It's
certainly
absolutely.
looks like some of the videos I've seen of people on the space station that there is, an element of fun. I guess there has to be, really, to
There
bring
does.
together. Yeah.
Yeah, there does. I mean, you're living there. You're not just working there, right? You're living there. So part of that experience has to be the personality of it too, I think. I always joke about it being, you've got to bring the human into human spaceflight. And that happens. It's, you train with this crew, with the people you're going to fly with for, a number of years. And if you haven't trained directly with them, them through the astronaut or the cosmonaut program in some way, because it is a relatively small community. And there's just there's an element of joy in being there, of awe and wonder, all of those things. You can't deny those things
Mhm.
while you're there. And everybody individually and then together wants to experience that. And then I think it's interesting because at the same time, from kind of the job and taking care of each other's standpoint, as much as you are going to enjoy the experience, you also know, I mean, I felt every day with the people I was up there with that, man, when things don't go right, as they will not do all the time, it's like I trust every single one of these people to have my back and to take care of me. And I think they felt the same way about me. And that's an excellent kind of environment to be in. Yeah.
So cool that all the research, like you say, I read the motto of the station: off the
Mhm.
earth, for the earth. So
Yeah.
the research you were involved with too, I suppose, was all to
Yeah.
do with living better on the earth. So
Yeah, and I think that's something that people aren't, I get the question all the time, well, what are we spending all this money in space for? And, we've got all these problems to solve down here. And I get that. I mean, I get the question. And it's probably because we don't do a very good job communicating what is going on up there that
right. Yeah.
is translating into how we live better lives down here.
What is going
But
on up there?
I mean, everything, just like you said, and it's such a perfect motto, and it's one that one of my classmates and crewmates, Kevin Ford, came up with, and it was originally like the motto for his space station mission when they were creating their patch. And the space station program loved it so much, they're like, "We're taking this, Kevin, and we're using it, from here on out," because it speaks really beautifully to what we're doing there, whether it's the international partnerships that we've established and that continue peacefully and successfully for over 20 years now, or it's the science that we're doing, or it's the technology that had to happen to be able to build the station, or how we have discovered how we can even live there. Everything about those things, in one way or another, is, yes, helping us live in space, helping us explore further off our planet, but is ultimately helping us improve life down here on Earth. And that could be examples of like the water purification system that we have, the way we reclaim every bit of moisture that is created on that station and recycle it into clean drinking water. That could be the way we grow protein crystals on the space station that grow in 3 dimensions in a way that we just can't create perfectly down here on Earth, that then allow us to look at vaccines and the way our cells grow and how we can, proactively care for ourselves here on Earth, or, have remedies for things that we can't create in the environment we have down here on Earth. And I don't know, those ginormous solar panels that you see that generate all of the electricity that we use on that space station. I mean, there's no better example of living off the grid you can find than than the International Space Station, and elements of that are coming back to Earth, both in the way we're looking at how to manage renewable energy here on the planet, but also how do we translate that again back to space for things like space-based solar power that can lift all of that harmful stuff off the planet to get us what we need. So
Well,
we
thank you
could
for
talk all
explaining.
day.
Yeah, thank you for explaining
Yeah,
that. That's important for us all to know, I think.
yeah.
And of course, there was two things you did on the space station that no one had done before. I read
Okay.
one was the tweet up that you did, tweeting,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, people on Earth. So that's pretty amazing. But also
That was
the
fun.
painting the picture in space, doing a painting of a photo, I guess, of some islands off Venezuela that you
Yeah,
saw from. Yeah, tell us a bit
yeah.
about that. That must be.
Well, that was fun, I'll tell you. And it's not something I would have thought to do myself. Again, like those mentors, I consider Mary Jane Anderson a mentor in a way too, who helped me prepare to go to space in a way I hadn't really thought about. I mean, I was so concerned about my checklists and, okay, taking pictures of my family with me and making sure I was ready to do the job, that I didn't think about it necessarily from how, while I'm living there, could I maybe bring something that I enjoy doing on Earth with me to space? And she encouraged me to do that. And that turned into bringing a little watercolor paint kit and painting one painting in space. And not at the time having any clue that nobody had painted with watercolors there before. I mean, I don't think you're thinking about that when you decide to do something like this. And just really enjoying it. Really feeling like it was a special, I mean, it was definitely a special part of the experience for me. It was my way, I think, of bringing the human into human human space flight. I mean, so many others before had played musical instruments in space, had drawn, sketched or drawn. My friend Karen Nyberg quilted while she was up there, and people are writing poetry. And if you weren't a photographer before you get to space, you become one because you want to, capture the experience. And so painting became part of that,
So
that whole thing
obviously,
for me. Yeah.
and seeing the Earth from out the
Yeah.
window, you said that really made a huge impact on.
Oh yeah, I think it does on everyone. And it's funny because now I look through every window in a little bit different way, kind of seeking out, what's the awe and wonder out my back window here. And I try to encourage people to do that too, because I think so much of the time we just get so caught up kind of in our, like, with the blinders on, right? And um, I have a picture I show in some of my presentations. I love the tropical, like what I painted of those little islands on the northern coast of Venezuela. But across the Pacific, I mean, I there's one that's like a tiny little heart-shaped island in the Red Sea, and we had big zoom lenses, so we could zoom way in and find all these little things that were on the planet. And I show people this picture, and I always say, I mean, I think about it because I remember feeling this way. I'm like, God must have a really wonderful sense of humor, because I really feel like these little things, I mean, like, I get goosebumps thinking about it. Like, these natural little things that are on Earth, like, we're meant to discover them. We're meant to be curious about them. We're meant to explore and seek them out and find even like the otherworldly places on Earth where maybe we can't survive, acid lakes in Ethiopia that from space and even from the surround look beautiful, and yet they're deadly to us, but things live there. There's life in those places. And I think there's, maybe sense of humor is not the way to describe it, but I really believe there's purpose in it, to look at the Amazon River floating in space and see like the profile of an elephant with its trunk up, and things that look like footsteps on the Pacific Ocean, the way the shape of the atolls are. I mean, I believe they were put there and meant to be that way. Yeah.
That leads me to, I was thinking, before this interview began, that I was wondering if your faith sort of shaped the way you looked at the Earth and experienced the beauty of space itself, but also on the other side of the coin, was your faith strengthened or deepened by that experience?
Yeah, I think it was already there before I flew. I certainly think that it was, I don't know, I think in all I saw, there was a reflection of it in all of that, right? Um, I hate to say that it didn't strengthen it, but I think it was already there, right? So it's just like, wow, I'm seeing it in new ways. I'm seeing it expressed in different ways. I mean, to be able to look at Earth and go, oh my gosh, I really do live on a planet. How'd that happen? And it's like wow, we're all Earthlings. Only word that matters, that thin blue line. And then to contemplate this whole, um, just sense of how perfect that is, like how perfectly placed, and there's nothing else like it in our solar system that we've discovered, where the perfect distance from the sun, everything we need to take care of us is wrapped in that thin veil of blue atmosphere. I think the reinforcement or the strengthening might have just been in the acknowledgement of how blessed we are to be in this place, and how just perfectly purposeful it seemed to me.
Right. And
Yeah.
that always more to discover
Yeah.
and explore. Yeah.
Yeah. And the same was true underwater, I think, and our whole crew, very, very thankfully, I don't know how these things happen in life, but all of us had, a level of faith I think that we brought into that mission. And we had Easter. We celebrated Easter underwater, and tried to tried to acknowledge that as part of the mission too. And Yeah, I think it just makes it a more special experience as well to incorporate that. Yeah.
Mm. You did a spacewalk as well on your first trip to the space station, and
I did.
you were uh, only the 10th woman to ever have done that. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that was surprising to me that by that point, that was true. I think, there were women before me that had done different flights where they'd done multiple
Mm,
spacewalks, but yeah, that was a surprising statistic to me.
right.
But
So you were out there
yeah,
for like 6.5 hours or something.
yeah.
Oh man,
Goes by really slow and goes by super fast. It's like one of those
what
things.
an experience that must have
Yeah,
been. Yeah,
just awesome.
right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
but I
my
know you were
husband
busy.
jokes, that I got to ride the end of on the arm, on the big robotic arm, pick this box up from the end of the space station, and then Kevin flew me on the robotic arm down into the payload bay of the space shuttle, and that was about 25 minutes of being all alone out on the end of the arm, hanging onto this box, just moving, like feeling like I was standing still and watching the station move out of my view, watch Earth rotate, and then out of nowhere, it's like the space shuttle popped into my view. But absolutely the most peaceful, I don't know, just kind of calming, quiet. I mean, I remember thinking at one point, because I had my temperature set just right and it was just so comfortable, and I'm hanging on to this box that on the Earth would weigh like 900 pounds, but up there was like nothing to hang on to, and just thinking, oh, just don't fall asleep. Don't be the one that falls asleep out here. It was so comfortable, just so completely comfortable. Yeah.
And then on your second trip, uh, you flew the space station robotic arm. Is that right? On your
Yeah,
second trip.
I had done that on my first flight too, on the space station. Probably the most significant task with that was grabbing this. I say grabbing this cargo vehicle that had flown up to the station, and then just kind of was floating out there, and we had to reach out and grab it with the arm. And
Right.
I got to do that. And I know Bob Thirsk,
Mhm.
Canadian astronaut extraordinaire. He was by my side as I did that, and also my crewmate Frank Davina from Belgium, from the European Space Agency. And so we worked as a team, bringing that Japanese cargo vehicle onto the space station. And yeah, that was one where, there's times in your life, I think, where you're getting so prepared to do something. You've done all the training, and you're doing it, and you're actually doing the task, and you're, really into it. And then afterwards, when we were done and we knew everything was safe, it's like floating away from the controls and just, I mean, all of us looked, and it's like hands shaking. Like all the adrenaline just got released. You did what you were supposed to do, and now it's like you can think about it, the weight being lifted off the shoulders, and just kind of the physical, emotional impact of getting to do something like that. Yeah, pretty incredible.
So two trips up to the International Space Station,
Hmm.
and and then back home again, and
Yep,
deciding a few years later to retire.
yeah,
But the adventure continues.
it does.
I just thought it was so wonderful that you wanted to continue sharing your experiences, and you thought to sharing with children, like sharing with your son
Yeah.
Roman, and that was a way to go. But also through art, I think that was a real epiphany. So
It absolutely was. I mean, it's so weird because I think all of us, I think in anything we're doing, whether it's astronaut or not, we want to find ways, if there was something meaningful in it, to share it with others, so that maybe they get their own call to action out of it, right? And I just, as I was retiring, was thinking, yeah, art could be a way for me to do that, to engage audiences that might not even know there's a space station, right? Share this off the earth, for the earth messaging with them. And I was on a path to doing that, just really focusing on my own artwork, and was very fortunate to get introduced to an artist that was working at one of the at MD Anderson there in Houston at the Pediatric Cancer Center. He had started their art and medicine program, and he wanted to do something space themed. And we started working there in that one hospital, and it's grown now into an organization called the Space for Art Foundation, where we are working with kids in hospitals and refugee centers. I can honestly say all over the world. Our latest spacesuit that we're working on has, we've collected from at least one child a piece of art in every country on the planet. And it's so cool. Like, I've got the suit behind me, but ILC Dover, Astrospace, also there in Houston, has volunteered with us since the very beginning. And they make our real spacesuits, that one I wore on my spacewalk. And they made the ones that walked on the moon too. And they are making the ones that will take us back there as well. They are the spacesuit company. They have volunteered since the beginning to quilt these children's art together into these just gorgeous art spacesuits. And we've been fortunate to have a couple of them fly to the space station, and the kids to get to see that, interact with it. But just an incredible way. We like to say that we're uniting a planetary community of children through the awe and wonder of space exploration and the healing power of art. And I can absolutely say that I've discovered, my next mission in life, that and whether perhaps God has placed me in this in this way to do what I'm doing now, that I got to go to space, do those things so that I can work on these projects with the kids around the world. It's
so inspiring
yeah.
too to the rest of us. Wow.
Wow.
And I encourage people to visit the website for the Space
Thank you.
Art Foundation. And just to end, and now you've written a book.
I have, yes, I know. Pretty much about all the stuff we just talked about,
Right, and it's just coming out.
In one way or another.
Called, I love the title, by the way, Back to Earth: What Life in Space Taught Me About Our Home Planet and Our Mission to Protect It. And just really, again, just thank you for bringing that all together and sharing that with us in that way. So that's looking forward to reading that book. So.
Well, thanks, and I hope others will too. And I just have to peek and show you. So I finally got the galley copy of it, So it's like it's real. It's like it's real, and I'm so excited, to hear all thoughts on it, and really hopeful that people will walk away from reading it with a sense of earthliness, of wanting to be crewmates here on Spaceship Earth, and acknowledging this this wonderful planet that we live on.
Well, I just want to end with I have now on my bulletin board your 3 lessons that you learned, if I may read them.
Please.
We live on a planet, which that in itself is kind of news to many of us to think of it in that way. We are all Earthlings, and the only border that matters is that thin blue line that blankets us all. And that's really important things to remember. Thank you for conveying that
You're
to
welcome.
us in words.
I'm so thankful that you've seen that, and that it means something to you too. I think that really, we all learn those things when we're in kindergarten, I think, but there's a real power, I think, in bringing it, back kind of in the front of our brains to think about actively. And, we really can create a future for all life on Earth that's as beautiful as it looks from space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you for your time today. It's been
my pleasure.
Total delight to talk to you. And I just again want to thank you for the many ways that you're in sharing the incredible experiences you had in space. It's really wonderful and important and inspiring too. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks to you guys too for what you're doing.
Okay.
Appreciate it.